The wind howled outside like a wounded animal, rattling the shutters of my little clapboard house on the edge of Elmwood, Ohio. It was one of those autumn evenings where the sky hung low and bruised, dumping sheets of rain that turned the dirt road into a river of mud. I sat in my armchair by the hearth, the fire crackling low, its orange glow flickering across the walls papered with faded roses, reminders of happier days. My hands, gnarled like oak roots from years of gardening and washing, clutched a woolen blanket over my lap. Across from me, curled up on the footstool with her favorite stuffed bear, was Sophie, my 8-year-old granddaughter. Her blonde pigtails were damp from the dash in from the car, and her blue eyes, so much like her daddy's, watched me with that quiet worry kids get when they sense a storm brewing inside you. "Granny Maggie, why are you staring at the fire like it done you wrong?" Sophie asked, her voice tiny against the gale. She hugged Mr. Bear tighter, his one ear floppy from too many bedtime stories. I let out a slow breath, the kind that carries the weight of too many unsaid words. The mantel clock ticked steady, like a heartbeat in the dim room, and a photo caught the light, me, young and smiling, arm round my boy Jack on his graduation day, his wife Lisa, pretty as a picture in her sundress, and Sophie, just a baby then, all chubby cheeks and no teeth. That was before things soared, before the love turned to resentment like milk left too long in the sun. "It's not the fire, sugar pie," I said, my voice rough as cornbread. I shifted in the chair, the springs groaning under me like they felt my ache. "It's a memory clawing its way out, sharp as a thornbush. You really wanna hear it? This one's got shadows, deep ones that still make my chest hurt." Sophie nodded quick, scooting closer till her knee bumped mine. The rain drummed harder on the tin roof, isolating us in this cozy cage of wooden warmth. Her little hand reached for my blanket, tugging it like she could pull the story out gentle. She'd been coming here every other weekend since Jack and Lisa moved to the city 2 years back, leaving me in this house full of ghosts. Tonight, though, with the wind whipping the maple branches against the window like accusing fingers, she looked smaller, needing something solid to hold on to. And me? I needed to let it go, before it swallowed me whole. "All right then," I whispered, leaning forward so the firelight danced in my eyes. "It starts with a betrayal, child. The worst kind, the one from family, when the knife twists slow, 'cause it's wrapped in silk. Imagine this, a Sunday dinner at Jack and Lisa's place in Columbus, not long after Sophie here turned 6. The table set nice, white lace cloth, china plates borrowed from Lisa's mama, candles flickering, like they were trying to light up the cracks. The air smelled of pot roast slow-cooked all day, gravy thick with onions, and apple cobbler warming in the oven. Laughter at first, easy as pie, Jack telling jokes from his construction job, Sophie giggling over her mashed potatoes, me passing the rolls with a smile that hid how my knees ached from the bus ride over. Sophie's eyes went wide, the bear forgotten in her lap. The fire popped, sending a spark up the chimney like a warning. Outside, lightning cracked, illuminating the room in a blue-white flash that made the shadows jump. I could almost taste it, the savory steam rising from the platter, the clink of forks on plates, the way Jack's hand brushed mine when he took the salt shaker, a echo of the boy I'd raised alone after his daddy ran off. We'd been a family, tight as sticks, for nigh on 10 years since Jack married Lisa. She was city-bred, all sparkle and ambition, working at that fancy real estate office with dreams of a big house and vacations to Florida. Me? I was the country grandma, showing up with jars of peach jam and stories from the farm where I grew up. Jack built their starter home with his own hands, 2 bedrooms, a swing on the porch for Sophie. I helped where I could, babysitting when Lisa worked late, mending clothes, even planting that victory garden out back during the hard times when money was scarcer than hen's teeth. Sacrificed my weekends, my sleep, walking the floor with colicky babies and scrubbing spit-up stains till my fingers pruned. Loved fears like they were my second chance after losing Jack's spa to the mill accident when my boy was just 5. A gust shook the house, and Sophie shivered, her hand slidden into mine. Her palm was warm, soft, life yet to be weathered. I squeezed it, feeling the steady thrum of her pulse against my faded one. Go on, Granny, she breathed. What went wrong at dinner? I swallowed hard, the memory sour as vinegar. It was midway through the meal, Grace said, and belly's half full. Lisa stood up sudden, her chair scraping loud on the hardwood. She smoothed her apron, the one with the little daisies I'd sewn for her birthday, and cleared her throat. Jack looked up, puzzled, fork halfway to his mouth. Sophie stopped coloring her placemat, crayons rolling, forgotten. And me? I smiled, thinking maybe she had a surprise, like announcing another baby or a promotion. But her eyes, Sophie, they were hard as flint, flicking to me with something cold brewing behind M. Margaret, she said, Usin, my full name like a stranger would, we need to talk about you living with us. My heart stuttered, living with M? I'd only stayed over a handful of times when Jack's back went out or Sophie had the flu. But she kept going, voice steady as a preacher's sermon. This house is getting crowded. Your stuff everywhere, your ways, it's too much. I don't want this useless old woman dragging us down anymore. The words landed like a slap, echoing in the sudden hush. Gasps hung in the air, Jack's fork clattering to his plate, Sophie's crayon snapping in her fist. The candles guttered, shadows stretching long across the walls like accusing fingers. Useless. Old woman. After all the nights I'd rocked their girl through fevers, the miles I'd walked to the store with heavy bags so Lisa could rest her feet, the holidays I'd cooked till my apron was stained and my bones weary. I'd given up my little house in Elmwood, rented it out cheap to a young couple, thinking family came first. Sacrificed my independence, my quiet evenings with a book and tea, for there, just till we get on our feet. Sophie gasped now, her free hand covering her mouth just like her daddy's had. The fire dimmed, needing a poke, but I couldn't move. Rain lashed the window, blurring the porch light to a hazy glow. Granny. Mama said that? To you. I nodded, tears stinging, but held back. Not in front of her. Right there, with the roast gone, cold and the cobbler waiting. Faces round the table froze, neighbors invited over, Lisa's sister staring at her plate, Jack's boss coughing into his napkin. Whispers started, soft at first, then buzzing like flies. Lisa's chin lifted, smug as if she'd dropped a truth bomb that freed her. You can go back to that drafty old place in Elmwood, she added, like it was a kindness. Or find somewhere else. But not here. Jack mumbled something about talking later, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine, guilt twisting his face like a wrung-out rag. The room spun in my mind's eye, the lace cloth rumpling under clenching fists, the candle wax dripping, slow like my melting resolve. I sat there, fork limp in my hand, the pot roast tasting like ash. Useless. After burying my husband young, raising Jack on waitress tips and sheer grit, fighting through the loneliness of empty nests and urchin joints. I'd poured love into them like water on parched earth, only to be called a weed. Sophie's sniffles broke the spell, her cheeks wet. She climbed into my lap, burrowing close, her bear squished between us. I wrapped my arms round her, breathing in the scent of rain and baby shampoo, the only pure thing left. It hurt bad, didn't it, Granny? She whispered, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Like a gut punch from someone you trusted, I admitted, my voice cracking like the fire. Wanted to yell, to tell her every sleepless night I'd given, every sacrifice that built their life. But I didn't. Something in me, Mama's old sighing bout catchin' more flies with honey, kept me calm. I stood slow, legs shaking under my skirt, and forced a smile. Well, folks, I said, voice carrying over the awkward quiet, looks like Granny's got a new adventure brewing. Pass the cobbler, it'll sweeten the surprise. Nervous chuckles rippled, and Jack jumped up to help me to the door, but inside? I was crumbling. As the dinner dragged on, forcing smiles, dodging eyes, I slipped out early, calling a cab with shaking fingers. The ride back to Elmwood blurred past in neon streaks, rain mirroring the tears I finally let fall. That night, alone in my rented-out house, now empty again, dust thick on the sills, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the deed I'd tucked away years ago. The house Jack grew up in, paid off with my savings from cleaning houses and bucking pies for church sales. I'd kept it quiet, a safety net no one knew about. Not even Lisa, with her big plans. The wine died down outside, leaving a drip from the eaves. Sophie lifted her head, eyes shiny but fierce. What happened next, Granny? Did you go back? I brushed a tear from her cheek, my thumb rough but tender. That's tomorrow's chapter, darling. The rain's easing, and you've got dreams waiting with the fireflies. But hold this close, family can wound deeper than strangers, but it's the scars that teach us to stand tall. She yawned, nodding, and I carried her to the trundle bed, tucking the quilt round her small form. As I kissed her forehead, the clouds parted, stars winking like old friends. Back by the hearth, I poked the fire higher, watching the flames dance. The story wasn't done, there would be the packing, the arguments, and that knock at the door come morning, Changi, everything. But for now, in the quiet, I felt a spark. Survival wasn't just endure, it was outsmarting the hurt. What if I'd spoken up that night? Would Lisa have seen me different? Or was the kick coming, no matter what? The morning light crept through the lace curtains, soft and grey, like it was tiptoeing around the hurt still lingering in my bones. I stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal slow, the spoon scrapping the pot with a rhythm that matched the ache in my chest. The air smelled of cinnamon and damp wood, the fire from last night reduced to embers in the hearth. Sophie sat at the kitchen table, her bare feet swinging under the chair, a half-eaten apple in her hand. Her pigtails were lopsided, one ribbon loose, and her eyes, still carrying yesterday's tears, followed my every move like I might vanish if she blinked. Granny Maggie, she said, her voice muffled by a bite of apple, you said you had the deed. Did Mama really make you leave their house? What would you do next? She leaned forward, the table creaking under her elbows, Mr. Bear propped beside her plate like a silent guard. I set the oatmeal pot down, the steam receding like a sigh. Pulling my housecoat tighter, its faded roses a match for the wallpaper, I settled into the chair across from her. The clock ticked steady, counting out the seconds like it knew how hard it was to dig up these memories. Oh, Sophie, I didn't just leave, I said, my voice low, like I was afraid the walls might overhear. I fought in my own way, quiet but fierce. Let me take you back to those days after that dinner, when the world felt like a storm with no shelter. I leaned back, the chair groaning, soft, and let my eyes drift to the window. The maple tree stood still, its leaves gold and red against the morning mist, like a painting of a life I used to know. Picture it, sugar pie. It's the week after that Sunday dinner, late fall, with the air sharp enough to bite. I was back in Elmwood, in this very house, unpacking my things from the suitcase I'd carried to Jack and Lisa's. The floorboards creaked under my steps, and the air smelled of dust and time. My old tea kettle, the one your great-grandpa gave me when we married, sat on the stove, dented but loyal. I'd left their fancy Columbus place quick, taking only what was mine, a few dresses, my mama's quilt, and that deed, folded tight in my purse like a promise. Sophie's apple dropped to the table with a soft thud. She wiped her hands on her pajamas, her eyes big as saucers. Did Daddy try to stop you? Was he mad at Mama? I sighed, stirring my tea, the spoon clinking against the cup like a tiny bell. Your daddy, oh, Jack was torn, Sophie. He came by the bus station that next morning, his pickup idling in the rain. His face was all crumpled, like he'd been up all night arguing with himself. Ma, he said, voice breaking, you don't gotta go. We'll figure it out. But I saw it in his eyes, he was caught between his wife and his mama, and Lisa's words had sunk deep. Useless old woman. They stung him too, but he didn't know how to fight her. I hugged him, told him to take care of Sophie, and boarded that bus. My heart was heavy as a sack of flour, but I wouldn't beg. The memory flickered like a silent movie in my mind, the bus's rumble, the rain streaking the windows, Jack's silhouette shrinking in the rear view. When I got back here, the house felt like a stranger. I'd rented it out for 2 years, and the young couple left it tidy but not mine. The garden was overgrown, thistles choking the roses, and the porch swing sagged like it missed me. I stood there, suitcase at my feet, and felt the loneliness settle in, cold as the November wind. I was 62, Sophie, with hands that knew work, scrubbing floors for neighbors, planting crops through lean years, holding Jack through fevers and heartaches. But Lisa's words echoed, useless. Like all those sacrifices, raising Jack alone after his daddy's accident, saving till my eyes burned to pay the bills, meant nothing. Sophie's lip quivered, and she slid off her chair, climbing into my lap like she used to when she was a toddler. Her warmth was a lifeline, her breath soft against my neck. You're not useless, Granny, she whispered, fierce-like. You're the strongest person I know. I hugged her tight, my throat thick. Bless you, child. But back then, I had to prove it to myself. That first week, I didn't cry, not after the bus ride, anyway. I got to work. Dusted every corner, swept the porch, yanked those thistles till my hands bled. The deed to this house, that was my ace. I'd saved for years, hidden money from cleaning, jobs and church bake sales in a tin under the floorboards. When Jack was a boy, I'd paid off the mortgage bit by bit, never telling a soul, not even him. It was my safety, my proof I wasn't just some old woman leaning on others. So when Lisa pushed me out, I had this place to land. The kitchen grew quiet, save for the clock's tick and a sparrow chirping outside. I could see it clear, the way I'd scrubbed this house back to life, the windows sparkling, despite my urchin wrists, the roses trimmed till they bloomed defiant. I started taking in work again, I continued, stroking Sophie's hair. Mending clothes for the townfolk, hemming dresses for prom, even patching overalls for the farmers. The sewing machine hummed late into the night, its needle dancing under the lamp like it was stitching my heart back together. Neighbors helped, Mrs. Carter brought me eggs, old Mr. Tate fixed the leaky roof for a plate of my cornbread. Elmwood wrapped me up, not with pity, but with kindness, like they knew I'd been cut deep. Sophie shifted, looking up at me, her eyes searching. Did Mama ever say sorry? Or Daddy? Did they come see you? I paused, the memory sharp as a splinter. Your daddy came once, about a month later. Showed up on a Saturday, Sophie asleep in the truck. He stood on the porch, hat in hand, looking like a boy who would broken something precious. Ma, he said, Lisa didn't mean it like that. She's stressed, with work and all. I wanted to believe him, but his eyes dodged mine, and I knew Lisa's mind was set. She'd invited her own parents to move in that week, taking my room, my place. I offered Jack coffee, but I didn't bend. This is my home, son, I told him. You've got your family now, and I've got mine. He left quiet, promising to bring you by soon. And he did, Sophie, you were my sunshine, even then. The sun climbed higher, warm in the kitchen, glinting off the teapot like a wink. Sophie's fingers twisted the hem of my housecoat, her voice barely a whisper. Did you hate Mama for it? No, darling, I said, soft but firm. Hate's a heavy load, and I was tired of carrying. I was hurt, sure, but I poured that hurt into living. Started bucking for the church again, joined the quilting circle, even helped organize the town fair. Every step was me sighing, I ain't useless. But deep down, I was waiting for what? I didn't know. Maybe an apology, maybe just time to heal. Then one morning, there was a knock at the door, loud enough to rattle the windows. Sophie's head snapped up, eyes wide. Who was it, Granny? I smiled, faint but real, put in her hand. That's for tomorrow, sugar. The story's got one more turn, and it's a big one. For now, let's get that oatmeal in you before it goes cold. She pouted but slid back to her chair, grabbing her spoon. As I watched her eat, the light catching her pigtails, I felt the past settle, not gone but quieter. The knock was coming, and with it, a chance to set things right. But that was a tale for another day, when the sun was high and my heart was ready. The afternoon sun poured through the kitchen window, painting the room in a warm honey glow that softened the edges of my old house. The smell of molasses cookies, Sophie's favorite, hung in the air, mixing with the faint lavender from the sachet I kept by the stove. I sat at the table, my hands folded around a chipped mug of tea, the steam curling like a memory. Sophie was sprawled on the floor, sketching wildflowers with her crayons, Mr. Bear propped against a chair like he was listening, too. Her pigtails bounced as she hummed, but her eyes kept darting to me, waiting for the rest of the story. Outside, the roses swayed gentle in the breeze, their pink petals dancing like they knew the weight of what was coming. Granny Maggie, Sophie said, setting her red crayon down, you stopped at the knock. Who was at the door? Did Mama come to say sorry? Her voice was soft but eager, like she was holding her breath for hope to win out. I smiled, my lips trembling just a touch. The clock on the mantel ticked steady, its rhythm a quiet anchor. Oh, sugar pie, I said, my voice low like a prayer. That knock was more than an apology. It was a reckoning. Let me take you back to that morning, when the world turned a corner I didn't see coming. I leaned back, the chair creaking, like it was settling in for the tale. My eyes drifted to the window, where a cardinal perched on the feeder, its red feathers bright against the green. The memory unfolded, vivid as a dream. Picture it, Sophie. Early spring, about 6 months after I'd settled back in Elmwood. The air was fresh, smellin' of wet earth and new buds. I was in the kitchen, kneadin' dough for the church bake sale, flour dustin' my apron like snow. The house was mine again, clean, alive, with jars of jam leanin', the shells and my savin' machine hummin' in the corner. I'd built a life, small but sturdy, with the quiltin', circle and Sunday hymns to keep me gone. But Lisa's words, useless old woman, still stung, like a splinter too deep to pull. Sophie scooted closer, her sketchpad forgotten. She tucked her legs under, eyes wide as the sky. Was it Daddy at the door? I shook my head, sippin' my tea, the warmth easin', the ache in my throat. Not your daddy, darlin'. It was Mr. Herlin, the lawyer. From town, all starched shirt and polished shoes. He stood on the porch, holdin' a manila envelope, his face serious as a judge. Margaret, he said, tippin' his hat, we need to talk 'bout your house. My heart dropped like a stone in a well. I thought maybe I'd missed a tax or some fool paperwork. Losing, this place would have been like losing my legs. I invited him in, hands shaking, as I poured him coffee, the pot clattering against the cups. The memory sharpened, the creak of the floorboards as Mr. Herlin sat, the envelope crinkling as he slid it across the table. He opened it slow, pulling out papers that looked official, stamped and signed. This house, he said, you own it outright, deed and all. But there's a claim against it. I froze, coffee forgotten. A claim? My mind raced to Lisa. Had she found a way to twist things, maybe thinking she could sell my home to fund her big dreams? Mr. Herlin went on, voice calm but heavy. Lisa's parents, the ones living with her and Jack, say you promised them a share of this property years back, for helping with Jack's schooling. They're pushing to take it to court. Sophie gasped, her crayon rolling to the floor. Granny! That's not true, is it? You didn't promise them nothing. Never, I said, my voice firm as the oak table. I raised Jack on my own, waitressing, cleaning houses, bucking, till my hands cramped. Lisa's folks sent birthday cards with $1 inside, maybe, but not a dime more. I sat there, staring at those papers, my blood boiling. Useless, she'd called me, and now her parents wanted to take the one thing I had left, this house, paid for with my sweat and secrets. But I'd kept that deed safe, hidden in the tin under the floorboards, and I wasn't about to let go. M.R. Herlin, I said, standing tall, you tell em to come see me themselves. This is my home, and I ain't budgin'. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the kitchen, like fingers reaching for the past. Sophie climbed into my lap, her warmth a shield against the chill of that day. What happened then? She whispered, her fingers twisting my apron strings. 2 days later, they came, I said, my voice dropping to a hush. Lisa's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Tate, pulled up in their shiny sedan, all puffed up like they owned the place. I met em on the porch, my apron still dusted with flour, my chin high. Mrs. Tate spoke first, her voice sharp as a blade. Margaret, we're family. You owe us for all we did. I laughed, couldn't help it, though it wasn't funny. Oh you? I said. I raised Jack while you sent Christmas cards. This house is mine, and I've got the papers to prove it. Mr. Tate blustered, talking about lawyers, but I held up a hand. Go ahead, I told em. Take it to court. You'll find nothing but my name on that deed. Sophie's eyes shone, a mix of pride and tears. You showed em, Granny. I did, I said, a small smile breaking through. They left, tails tucked, and never filed a claim. Word got round Elmwood. Folks at church started whispering "'bout my grit, not my pain." Jack called a week later, voice shaky. "Ma," he said, "I didn't know they'd try that. I'm sorry. I told him I loved him, but he needed to stand up for what's right." He started bringing, "You hear more, Sophie," and those weekends, your giggles, your muddy boots on my porch, were my salvation. Lisa never apologized, but she softened some, maybe saying I wasn't so useless after all. The radio in the corner played a soft hymn, its notes woven through the quiet. I rocked Sophie gentle, her head on my shoulder. "Life didn't stop hurtin', I murmured. Bills piled up, my knees ached worse each winter, but I kept going. Saving, Bakeen, singing, at church, those were my anchors. And you, my girl, you were my light. You'd run up that porch with your drawings, telling me about school, and I'd teach you to knead dough or thread a needle. Every moment with you stitched me back together, showed me love don't need to be loud to be strong." Sophie looked up, her face streaked but smiling. "You're my favorite, Granny. I'm never gonna let anyone call you useless." I kissed her forehead, tasting salt and sweetness. "And you're my hero, Sugar. This house, this life, it's yours to carry on. Build something beautiful, like I did, even when the world tries to knock you down." The sun sunk low, painting the sky in pinks and purples. The roses nodded outside, and the cardinal sang, and I felt peace, not perfect, but real. The pain of Lisa's words, the threat of losing my home, had forged me tougher, like iron in a fire. And Sophie, she was the hope that bloomed after the storm.